All right, everyone, the golden age is here at last because for some time, I said, and even when a lot of Trump fans didn't believe it was true anymore, Molyneux famously saying, well, I think Trump's going to cuck out basically on the DACA stuff. I said, no, don't worry, it's all part of his negotiating and you're going to get your wall. And now Business Insider. Business Insider is beginning to be more and more like the Atlantic. Like, they don't even talk about business for the most part. They'd rather talk about Trump all day because it brings them, I guess, more views. So for a long time, for many months, they've been saying, oh, Trump's probably demented, Trump is evil, Trump is, he doesn't know what he's doing. Here are 5 things Trump said that are crazy. That's basically what Business Insider posts at least once or twice a day. It's an obsession. It's propaganda. They're probably being paid to post half of it. Now even they are saying, hey, the Democrats are going to have to deal with this, and I know you're not going to like to hear it, but you're going to see a wall built. The Democrats aren't going to have any choice. Exactly. They're going to have to give Trump his wall. The main core of his immigration proposal was build the wall. That's the big kahuna. All of the others sort of revolve around it. You have lesser concerns. I would say that there are 4 blocks of material associated with his work. Number 1 would be the wall. That is a big one. Number 2, sanctuary cities. Number 3, DACA versus deportation, the mix of who gets deported and who doesn't, reforming that in favor of nativism. It doesn't have to be complete, but it would have to be, it couldn't be like amnesty mode like Obama would have wanted. And then number 4, you have some of these smaller concerns, certain blocks of people to be deported or whatever. Trump needs to get 2 of those in order to prevail in the next election. Otherwise, he alienates his core audience. And look, even the left-wing media is now saying he gets his wall. Going after sanctuary cities themselves would be a breeze because he can do that unilaterally by taking it before the Supreme Court and simply saying, hey, I have the right, the executive branch has the ability to enforce existing law. The DREAM Act was meant to be temporary. Now the Ninth Circuit is attempting to make it essentially permanent. I'm not willing to do that. Some of these people are going to lapse anyway. I'm going to challenge you all and deport anyone anyway. And he can raise holy hell by doing so, march into the sanctuary cities and deport people by force, and there's no legal recourse for these cities at all. They can't stand in the way of it's sort of, oddly enough, I will say this, it's sort of like the marijuana debate. In theory, if the federal government wants to, the federal agents can march in and break up your dispensary, even though it's legal in the state that you're in. It's not good optics to do so. The thing is, though, marijuana, most Americans don't mind if it's legal, and the overwhelming majority now support at least medical and decriminalized marijuana. The majority of Americans do not support blanket amnesty. They support maybe partial amnesty for a very small number of groups of people. Support for the wall is the majority of the United States. Most people want to guard the border. They may disagree on what form it takes, but generally speaking, the majority of the American public supports deporting illegal immigrants. The majority of the American public does not want to take in limitless swarms of refugees. It's settled as far as people's opinions on these things go. So the difference is essentially that unless it was super draconian, Trump has the upper hand on the whole debate. The Democrats have to know this. Like Chuck Schumer knows this. When he says that the wall is off the table, what he means is, hey, I'm setting the stage to really, really look weak in a few weeks or months. Because as the debate goes on, and maybe another budget, crisis looms, or the end of DACA, comes in a court sense, they will be begging to talk to Trump again and stave off a Supreme Court decision. No, they don't want the Supreme Court to get involved because it'll side with Trump. It's a conservative court, 5-4. They'll side with Trump on DACA. They'll side with Trump on all of these things. Sanctuary cities, they'll slap them down and tell them, no, you can't ignore immigration law unilaterally. You don't have that. That's not covered under the 10th Amendment. Immigration is more of a federal thing, not a state thing. Unless the federal government has decided not to enforce it, in which case, yeah, your militiamen on the border like they had in Texas there for a while, those are okay. Which, by the way, Obama tried to say were unlawful. Actually, that's totally untrue. Militias at the border can indeed stop someone who is illegally here. Absolutely, they have the legal right to do so. And to defend themselves with lethal force if necessary in so doing. Because that person is not protected by the Constitution, only by the civil rights held under globalism. But, of course, those don't 100% have effect because nothing can overrule the Constitution within the United States. People have a right to defend their homeland. They have a right to defend their own personal private property. They have a right to defend themselves. It's inalienable. There's nothing the states or localities can fucking do about that. Thankfully, we now have an administration that understands this fact. But when business insiders saying, oh yeah, if DACA gets reauthorized in part or whole, it's going to involve building the whole fucking wall. It's not even going to be a block payment of, oh, Trump says, oh, okay, give me the first half of the funding and you can have DACA back. That's not going to happen, dude. He's going to want all the funding up front for part of DACA. He'll trade maybe another part of DACA for a crackdown on sanctuary cities that doesn't involve waiting for the Supreme Court to get its ass in gear. Or Ginsburg to die off so you have another conservative justice replacing an old, tired neoliberal. And at that point, Trump gets all. He doesn't even have to negotiate. The Democrats would have to win the House or the Senate back just to stand in his way. Even then, it wouldn't be necessarily ironclad. They'd still end up having to negotiate because he'll hold something else over their heads. Yeah, DACA, I do not predict will be fully reauthorized. I expect some people covered under the DREAM Act will be deported or fall out of status, become, illegally here in the most strict sense. Others will be allowed to remain, but in return, Trump will get his wall and some combination of these other things that he needs, probably sanctuary city crackdown via legislative action. And then he'll use the courts to get the rest of what he feels he needs. Because his core fans will look at the wall's been built, sanctuary city stuff is over. That in itself is a B+. They'll want a little bit more to give him the A. He'll go after some group of people, some group of refugees he'll ban from the United States and carve off another 10,000 people, and then it gets him the gold star. And that's all he needs, by the way, to have at least as much fervor among his actual existent third of the population, his true hardened fan base, in the next election. Then he simply needs to target the centrists. Well, actually, he doesn't really need to do much more with that because he already passed tax reform, and he's crushing his way through bureaucracy. That's all he needs to do for them, because for them it's about the money. His core fans, a lot of them, they're like immigration and money. Well, he's done both of those now. The centrists are like money and any other mundane thing, and they'll vote for Trump. Plus, the Democrats are going to have a hell of a time energizing their fan base. It's going to be very difficult to reconcile the young upstart actual liberals with neoliberalism like this corporate model. And some people, they keep telling me neoliberalism is only an economic model. No, you're getting your definitions wrong in modern use. Maybe the original term, but then again, the original term alt-left means like basically the new left of neoliberalism, basically. It's now more commonly used to describe groups like Antifa, like anarcho-communists, the far, far left, the social justice, the people that will use their menstrual blood in cooking pancakes in order to shock and offend people on Tumblr. That's what we're talking about when we use alt-left. When I say neoliberal, what I mean are the corporate liberals, which is to say they're not liberal at all. They happen to be partisan Democrats usually. They take bank money, corporate money, and they're pro-war. They're basically like Republicans. They're basically like, a George Bush. Like Hillary Clinton and George Bush, it'd be difficult to tell them apart at this point. They even hang out together. They appear to have some sort of weird relationship going on. I guess that they go and they take captured Iraqi slaves and they watch Dick Cheney shoot them with birdshot. He has his private island where he releases Iraqi children on the island, then goes hunting after them while he's wearing his fatigues and carrying his Mossberg and stuff. That's what I imagine Dick Cheney gets up to sometimes. He's a murderous, weird fellow. And all the people around him are murderous and weird too. Except that Bush wouldn't have the gall to actually take a person apart that's right in front of him. He'd rather command somebody else to do it so he can watch it on TV, because that's the sort of weirdo he is. And Clinton's probably the same. Like, she prefers, I think, explosives over guns. Hydrogen Hillary, as I've said. She'd force feed him polonium, so she'd say, aha, I can be just as crazy as Vlad over there. Vladimir, eat your heart out. Here, take this fucking pill. It's going to kill you in a few days with massive systemic cancer, and I'm going to watch every bit of it. That's the sort of stuff I imagine she likes. No, DACA is never going to be fully restored. The courts will shoot it down anyway, so why wouldn't the Democrats want to negotiate to keep part of it alive? They'll get part of DACA, and Trump gets every fucking thing he wants. That's called winning. That's a good negotiation. By the way, the majority of the American public doesn't care. The majority of the American public wants the wall. It's quite simple. They don't want a porous border defense. Most people aren't social justice weirdos. That's just the way that it goes. The Democrats are going to have to leave eventually, I think, this wedge issue behind. I think this is, as a wedge issue, sort of what the Republicans used to do with gay marriage. Now, they've left it almost completely behind. You don't hear much from them. Maybe in a really red district, some evangelical candidate will bring it up as a tip of the hat, say, yeah, I still love Jesus, don't worry. Otherwise, the Republicans don't fucking make it a national platform. They don't even make it a state platform at this point. Not even in a state like Alabama or Wyoming are you going to hear this become a major issue in a campaign for a GOP member. Because, like, what is it? 60% of the American public supports gay marriage. It would be a losing issue, including in a lot of states that lean red. It would be the death knell of a campaign. Unless you can be so much of a Jesus freak firebrand that your core fan base is simply going to turn out at much higher levels. It's a lot harder to do that than to look sane. Now the Democrats are doing it with immigration. They're trying to do the moralist, holier-than-thou thing and pretend like the silent majority is behind them. It's not. The majority of Americans do not want a bunch of people in this country illegally. It has nothing to do with them being bigoted. It has to do with the restoration of rule of law that was largely usurped in the wake of Obama winning. Up until then, it was considered common sense among all classes of Americans that yes, indeed, the border needs to be defended. We have an insular culture. If you want to come here, that's great. Sign the paperwork and go through the legal process. That's not racist. It's not inconveniencing anyone, and no one has a human right to come to the United States. Nobody has an intrinsic right to arrive here as an immigrant, regardless of their situation in life. The United States could ban all immigration from every part of the world. It would be our right to do so. Every refugee, every migrant worker, every would-be tourist. We could block all tourism to this country if we wanted. It would be terrible for our economy. I mean, we'd get pariah status for doing so, but we do have that right. There are other countries that basically ban immigration. Look, Japan, nice, orderly, wealthy country. Very, very little in the way of immigration. There's some migrant workers, but the number of refugees they've taken, you can count on your hands in a year's period. I think, what was it, 8 people? Or some crazy number like that? I don't see many people complaining about the Japanese being, oh, this is terrible, they need to pull their weight. No, they don't. They need to protect their culture because they're protective of it, and that's their right to do. Nobody has a right to impugn upon it. Does that make them like Nazis or something? You know, other than those that dress up like Nazis as part of the costume play stuff. No, of course not. I'm surprised that they don't say, oh, I'm surprised that we don't get like Right Wing Watch making a Japanese Nazi culture thing, and then they'll like cherry pick like the teenager with the Nazi uniform on from some obscure anime show and say, oh, this is evidence that all Japanese people like worship Hitler and stuff. The world community needs to condemn this and do more. I wouldn't be surprised. The propaganda is insane at this point, but thankfully a lot of it's just really dumb, so it's fairly easy to work your way through it and realize that it's just propaganda. That's about all. Peace out.